Today I'm going to go through this painting step by step with you in a tutorial which is going to show you the stages to create such a beautiful autumn effect. So we're going to start with some wet in wet washes, and I'm going to show you how to mix the paints and the colours and how to apply them. I'm going to show you how to do some wet on dry techniques, how to do sponging, how to get effective masking fluid, and the last bit is the wow factor is this lovely glaze. Okay, so today we're going to have a go at some lovely autumn trees. I've got a really nice photograph. We've got some lovely oranges in here coming through, and some beautiful sun rays, so it's going to make for a really nice autumn tree picture. I'll pop that and a photo of my drawing on the community page. So the drawing is quite simple. You've got the path coming in either side, and then I just want you to pop in those 3 tree trunks. Keep them thinner than you think, and we're going to come on with a little bit of masking fluid. So here I have got a children's painting brush. It's like a cheap hog hair brush, and what I want to do is to splay this out a little bit. So if I do this, you can see it's all splayed out. And then I have got some drawing gum or masking fluid, and I'm going to preserve a little bit of the white of the paper. So I've popped a little bit into the lid because I don't want to put too much on here. So I'm going to aim just to dab it in, and then I'm looking for those orangey leaves. So I'm just going to dab on. I just want to break through these tree trunks really, and keep this lighter for later. If you're a bit worried about doing it, you can always dab onto a little bit of a tester paper first. Just dab this on, follow the arch. I'm looking at the yellowy orangey leaves and just popping those in. It's this front tree that I'm really focusing on. So just a few dabs just to get that in. The ones over this side I'm going to do with just with the paint. So I'm just rinsing that brush off. Just pretty much, it ruins the brush, but you can keep it for masking fluid. What I'm going to do as well is pick up a colour shaper and just a little bit onto the colour shaper, and I'm going to pop some random dabs just on the front of the path. So we've got some lighter leaves. Try to vary the stroke that you're using so you're getting that sort of random effect. These will be nice in the foreground of the picture. And I've used, but you don't need to use blue masking fluid, but I've used blue masking fluid so you can see that today. Okay, so whilst that's drying off, I'm going to talk to you about my colours. So I've got little pea-sized blobs of colour here. There's quite a few. I'm going to put in about half a teaspoon. So I'm using my wash brush. Pop in about half a teaspoon into each of these, and then I'll tell you what these colours are. If you don't have these colours, I don't want you to worry. I want you to use what you have. So if you have a different yellow, use that yellow. If it's a different blue or a different brown, just use it. It's important that you start to learn what your colours do. It'll still make a nice picture. So this first one is gamboge yellow. So it's a nice warm yellow. I'm mixing these up with my round number 10, and I want them all to be consistent. This next one is transparent orange. So these colours are all Winsor & Newton artist quality colours today. Sometimes I use the Cotman student quality colours, which are very good. So I have got transparent orange there. Just keep rinsing your brush. I always start with the lightest colour first so that I don't taint it. Then I've got cobalt blue. It's a favourite of mine. The sky's actually quite white on the photograph, but I always like to add a little bit of colour, so that's where the cobalt blue comes in. And then I've got sap green. Then this one is called Perylene Violet. It's an absolutely lovely colour. If you didn't have that colour and you were working with student quality colours, a good alternative is to mix a little bit of permanent rose with sepia or another brown or burnt umber, and that will work in a similar way. And then this last colour is sepia. So I've got 6 colours there, all ready to go. Okay, I'm just going to dry this masking fluid off and then off we go. Okay, so that masking fluid is dry and we're going to start by coming on with a wash on this top section. So we're going to get a sky in, and we're going to get some of these trees in, all the way down to the bottom of this path, or to the top of the path. So we're going to do this full section. I'm using Saunders Waterford paper today. It's a rough, it's cotton paper. I'm actually on a block. If you get an odd hair like this, you really don't need to wait. You can try and just take it off, but if you can't, then just leave it, and when it's dry, just rub it off. Spend a lot of time fiddling. This is the Squirrel Mop wash brush, and it does molt a little bit. So I'm going to use my round number 10. I'm going to come in first of all with a little bit of sky. So circular motion, because there is always sky behind trees. You can bring it all the way down if you want. You don't want to go too blue because then you can't see the yellows, but it is really nice to have that little bit of blue in the sky. So that circular motion just holds the paint. I'm pushing down, circling around, holds the paint where it needs to be. Rinse that out and dab it off. So I always dab off if I've mixed the colours. If I use neat colour, I don't dab off. Okay, so we're going to come in with the yellow now. If at any point that you think, oh, I need a smaller brush, just swap down to a smaller brush. I'm still quite comfortable using a round number 10 at this stage. This is these little bits of yellow going in. So I'm thinking behind these trees, so I'm just making sure I get something in there. Rinse off, dab off on the kitchen towel. I'll pick up a little bit of the green. So this is going to give us a base to do some sponging later. So you don't need to do every single tree. You just want this bit of a base in here, where you've got the orange and the green mixing. It makes really autumnal colours, because the green and the red bases are complementary, so it takes it to a brown, which is quite nice. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of orange in here. So we're just going to start this one off. So it's just a dabbing action, and I just want it to spread out really. Just a little bits of orange through here. You can see it's making those browns. Bring this through. So I'm working my way through the colours, rinsing off. I'm going to dab into the Perylene Violet. This is one of my favourite colours. I use it a lot in flower backgrounds as well. I'm keeping this now towards this bottom section, and you'll see that I've gone straight over these tree trunks. I just want you to ignore them at this stage. You don't need to paint around them. And then I'm going to dip into the sepia. So I want it to be nice and dark down here. I'm actually going to swap down to a number 6 now, because I just want to control this sepia a little bit more. So just dry my brush off. It just means I can get a nice neat edge on this path. So I want this to be nice and dark. This is a cotton paper, so it's going to stay wet a fair amount of time. So it gives you lots of time. Got a really nice soft effect happening there. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, and we're going to now tackle this bottom section. So popping the water on with my wash brush. Getting as close to that edge as I can. I'm going to pick up my round number 10. Just make sure that that is clean, because I'm about to go into the yellow again. Okay, so I'm going to come in with the yellow. You can see I'm doing a horizontal stroke. Start on the path. Take the brighter yellow further than it needs to go. There's also some bits within here. I'm going to dot into some of the green. This is just giving you your base to apply the paint on after. So I just want you to be thinking about your base colours. A little bit of green through here. So rinsing my brush out. Take a little bit of orange in here, just to indicate a bit of warmth on this path. Again, horizontal strokes. There's a pattern here. Horizontal indicates a surface. It makes the surface much better. So I just want you to think that. So I'm dabbing in a different way. I'm stroking that on. You can take a little bit of sepia onto the brush. Then I'm just going to come down this side. So I did only take a tiny amount of sepia on. I don't want this to be too strong at this stage. So I'm just stroking down this side to make sure that I get all of those bits. Just starting to stroke in the shadow, the tracks. They start narrow and get bigger as they get closer. It gives you a great sense of distance. Some of the dark coming into here, the sepia. Just dabbing my brush off on the kitchen tab. I haven't taken the paint off, and then what I'm going to do now is pull through those with a horizontal stroke. So I'm still doing that horizontal thing. It's just I've got the shape in first. So there's no extra paint on the brush. I've dabbed it off, in fact, just so I'm in control. I'm just moving what's there. Horizontal stroke. Just starts to give a real sense of surface, which is what you want. I'm actually going to take a little bit of the Perylene Violet in as well, just towards the front. This area is nice and dark down here, so that's going to build that up nicely. Then I want some of that violet in here as well. Taking a few strokes of the violet in this way as well. My brush to rinse. Okay, I'll dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now, and I've moved down to a small flat. This is a 1 centimetre flat. Just popped a little bit of water from the brush in there. I'm going to take some of the sepia into that, so I need a waterier mix, so about 3 dabs. Then I'm going to take a tiny little bit of the blue because I just want to grey it down a little bit. If I just get, so you can see there isn't a huge difference. It's waterier than that original mix and a little bit greyer, which is what I want. So where you've got sunlight, you always have shadows, and it's important that we get these on the path. So I'm going to keep the brush horizontal. The reason I wanted them to be more watery is because I don't want it to be too strong and stripy. I want to see the colour underneath. Because you're coming on to dry, you've got to move with this one shape and stick with it. You can't come back into here, you can't sort of come over here then go back. You've got to keep to that one shape. Once that one shape's done, you can come on to doing the next shape. And it's just all about getting the shadow in. Nice and quickly. Keep it nice and fluid. You don't want to end up with watermarks. So you can see this horizontal stroke that I'm doing. I'm keeping the brush horizontal. It just works wonderfully for surface. If you were on a bigger sheet of paper, you could use a wash brush to do it. Get the shadow in. But the shadow will make the picture. So it's really important. Just make a little bit more. As this dries, it will pale back and you'll see the layers underneath anyway. So it will still really work. Now, if you get any bits that are a bit drier, you see I've dabbed that off. I'm just going to bring that through, blend that through again. So there's hardly anything on the brush. I'm just blending to that edge that's left. So I'm just checking that I've got all of the shadow that I want in here. A little bit here. A little bit just here, I think. Okay, I'll dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm going to start to work on the distant trees. I'm going to use a little bit of sponging. First of all, there's a couple of tree trunks just towards this side that are lighter. Now we could have masked these out, but what happens when you mask out is it becomes really obvious. So in the distance, that's not always the best thing. So they're a bit like a silver birch, I think. And I'm just going to use a little bit of water. Just paint the water on, and I'm leaving that on the surface for a few seconds, and then I'm hoping that it would lift out just enough to show. I'm just going to come over that again. So with Saunders Waterford, it's quite hard to lift, and I've got a few autumn trees and tree techniques that show you how you can lift out using gum arabic, but I've not used it in this picture, so I've got to work a little bit harder to make it lift. I only need it to lift a little bit. I think that's enough. There's a little bit of light there. I'll be able to take that over in grey. I suppose what I can show you as well is you can agitate the surface a little bit. So if I just get a flat, I just don't want these to end up too thick. You can agitate the surface to lift a little bit more light. A flat works well for rubbing the surface of the paper. That has lifted them a little bit more. It's just an indication, that's all you need. So I have got a natural sponge, lots of bobbly bits. I want to dip it in the water, wring it out, so I'm checking it's clean first of all. Then I'm going to dab it off on my kitchen towel. I want to make sure that it's nearly dry. When I'm going into paint, I don't want to dilute it. So you can see there, look, it's pretty much dry. But wetting it means that it's movable, which is useful. So I'm going to start with my lightest colour. So I'm squeezing that and going into the yellow. You can see that there. I'm going to start dabbing in. As I dab, I twist in the air and then land in a different direction. I want every single sponge press to be a different angle. If it's not a different angle, you end up with a pattern. So if I just show you here. So I'm not moving it. You end up with the same pattern. That same pattern doesn't work. You also need to be very delicate. You need to make sure it's not too wet. So if you come on and there's lots and lots of paint here and it starts to go all merged into one, then you need to dry it and then carry on. Basically, I'm just going to build up some little bits of colour for these trees, the foliage, starting with the lightest and then working along. So I'm going to rinse that. A clean piece of kitchen towel here. I'll just squeeze it off in there. Again, squeeze the sponge, and I'm going into that orange. So nice, delicate foliage. You can take some of it into the yellow. It's quite nice to blend these through. So you've got little bits blending. Don't just stop and start in the colour that you've applied. Blend it into the other colours. Again, rinse off. Squeeze it off in the kitchen towel. Get my bits squeezed there. I'm going to come in with a little bit of sap green. Dabbing away. Nice and delicate. Again, blending through. So I haven't just got the colour in one place, it's blending through. Rinse. Dab off. You see, this is a process. Squeeze into the Perylene Violet. Keep this nice and low. Don't worry if you come over those tree trunks, we're going to place them back in. Just wanted that little bit of light on those two. You get this really, you get a nice blend that starts to happen when the colours mix together. So there's not a lot of Perylene Violet in there. I'm going to bring it in more at the foreground. Squeezed off again, and then we're going to come into the sepia. Nice and dark. Bring some bits up. That's got a really nice effect now. Just rinse that out and get it ready for the next stage. If I just pick up a little bit of this sepia now, and this is around number 6, whilst it's still wet and the sponging is wet, you can just come in and dab in and just add some additional bits of dark, and it just really will give nice depth. It's like an easy way of blending, really. You can come up a little bit higher where you can see denser areas. You can bring a little bit more in. It's a bit easier with a brush on a littler section, just to do a few little bits of dark. See, I'm just bringing that around this tree trunk now, that lighter one, just to start to bring it out. So those additional bits of dark that I'm putting in start to bring that out. Okay, so I'm going to dry that off now. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm going to carry on doing a little bit more sponging, and I'm also going to pick up a fan brush, which I'm not a huge fan of a fan brush, but this tree is the perfect shape for doing with a fan brush. So occasionally I will bring one out and have a go. So if I just pick up some of the sap green, and I'm also going to pick up a little bit of the cobalt blue because I just want this colour to just be a little bit darker. And then you're coming on and dabbing upright, and you're also twisting a little bit. I just want you to get these nice shapes. If you didn't have a fan brush, then you could just use a stippling brush. You could just carry on using your sponge. It's not the end of the world. You could use a small flat and just dab in. It's very rare I pick one up, mainly because it's quite a uniform pattern that you end up with, and I don't think it works that well apart from these sorts of particular trees. I've got all this masking fluid as well that's coming through this side. Just rinse that one off. I just pick up a number 6, and it's that same colour mix. I'm just going to break this up a little bit. All I'm really doing is randomly dabbing within this, because to me it feels like it's quite patterned, and I like it to not look patterned. So I'm just breaking the pattern up with random dabs. It's just trying not to think about it too much and just break up any pattern you can see. And just dab, dab, dab. That's better. Picking up my sponge again. I've already rinsed it earlier and it's ready to go. I'm going to pick up some colours for within this bottom section. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of sap green. What you'll find is the sponging does take a lot of paint. It sucks it up. And a bit of sap green towards this back section as well. I'm going to dip into a little bit of the cobalt blue. Just bringing that towards this front section. It's got a bit of a bluer feel, so this, I'm just using the colours I've got. I don't want to introduce any more, so I'm just going to mix with those. Rinse, dab off. I'll pick up some of the Perylene Violet. Now there's quite a lot within this now. So I'm being a bit more heavy-handed within here, and it will work. What I'm going to do is dry it in between and then come in with a little bit more colour, and it just builds up the depth, and you're then seeing how you can really work with these sponges. Take a little bit down here. It's blending in that line and bringing it all in one as well. You can actually just dab a few extra bits on the pathway. Sort of just breaks up that edge a little bit. Now I've run out of the sepia, so I've popped a little bit more in here. Just mix that up. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the sepia. Just bring that in there. And a little bit on the pathway. A bit through here. Again, just breaking that edge up. And if I pick up my round flat, just check it's rinsed and fairly dry. I'm just going to just spread those little specks this side so it just looks like little bits of shadow upon the surface. You can do a few through here as well, just spreads it a little bit, adds a bit of extra dimension. Okay, I'm going to dry that off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I just want to pop a little bit more sponging on. It's just building this up in layers. So if I now come in to that Perylene Violet with the sepia, it's going to really build this up. And this bit just under here as well. Start to get a really more depth in there, a really nice effect. Just wringing it out again, and then I've just missed, I don't know how much of this will come in, so this is sap green. I've missed some background tree here, so I'm just going to come over with a little bit of sap green just to break through this. Build that up a little bit. Take a bit of the blue in. Just need that to feel more fresh there, so that blue's helping. I'll just get a little bit more in here. It's just behind this other tree really, where you've got the masking fluid. And rinse that off. Okay, so while that's starting to dry, I'm going to pick up a long thin brush, which is a rigger. You can have a rigger or a line writer. I'm just going to twizzle upside down. Now I find it easier to paint downwards to a point, and we want these trees to have a really nice point. So if I turn the photo this way as well, so I can see where I'm going, just pull this so you can see both. I'm going to basically start to bring in, this is with the sepia, a few, resting on my little finger, nice light tree trunks and branches. You can stagger where they leave. You don't want these ones in the background to be too dark. These are just an indication. Just pop in a few wispy ones. And it just holds all that foliage together. Not too much effort. That little bit of grey mix we just have a look and just bring in a little bit of that, just where this silver birch is. So it's a bit grayer. This one behind. I've lost the light a little bit on that, but there's enough. Sometimes it's just not worth faffing with to try and get it to look any different. There's a little bit of light there, that works. Okay, I'll twizzle back round now. We're going to look at these bigger tree trunks, and I want them to be stronger in colour. So I'm going to get some sepia, and I'm going to use a round number 6. Now this is where you lose all of your lines and you've got to make them back up. This always happens. So you've got the masking fluid, which is breaking up this one, and we're just going to bring that through, and it starts to gel everything together. That's still a little bit damp, so we'll just carry on up at the top. I can do quite a lot with a round number 6 because it's got a good point, but if you want to swap down you can. A number 2 would be perfectly good, or using your rigger. So I'm just getting an indication. Where these are. We've got this masking fluid breaking through, which is really nice. We're just keeping these nice and dark. The sun behind is going to silhouette. Just remember they get slightly thicker as they get towards the bottom, thinner as they get towards the top. And then as you come into this foliage, I just want you to create a little bit of a jaggedy bottom on these, so just so that it grounds them in. I'll pick up my rigger again. So this is pretty much neat paint with a wet brush. It gives me a little bit of a thicker consistency, and I'm just going to run and create some nice fine branches. If at this point you're struggling, then turn upside down again. Turn the page upside down and work that way. You want to try and stagger where they're coming off. I just want a few. With something like this, less is always more. So I'm running through here just in case there are bits that I can pop the paint on. It's hard to see with the masking fluid. I'm actually going to make this a little bit thicker. I think it will lend well to just being that little bit thicker, this one. This is artistic license. It's got all this lovely masking fluid coming through. It just works really nicely to have those break points. It's going to make a really nice contrast as well. So just have a little look at this one, because this one looks like it needs to be just a little bit thicker. I'm just bringing up a little bit more paint. Just bring a little branch or two this way. Sometimes it's just about balance, and that comes with a little bit of practice really. You just want to just keep trying different things. So I'm adding a few little extra branches just on this foreground tree. And a few wispy bits here as well, that always works nicely. Trees are beautiful and they take a lot of practice to get them right, but the more you do them, the easier they become. Those little flicks at the top, like little Y's, just work really nicely. Okay. So I'm going to dry that off, and then I'm going to rub the masking fluid off. And we'll actually before I dry that off, I just need to put these rays of light in. So, wet brush. We've got the sun coming from here, so we're going to just paint through these a little bit. There's lots of different ways you can do sunlight. What I'm trying to do is just take just the bits off that I want to, so that's those rays of light coming that way. So it's just a damp brush. I'm dabbing that off. It isn't quite dry, so you have to be a bit careful that you're not dabbing everywhere. So it works better to get it before it's dry. Get a little bit here. I'll actually get a little bit coming down here. So you start to get those little rays of light coming through. So we're just going to pop a few of those in. Then I'll show you how to get that sunlight effect at the end. Okay, so I'll dry that off now. Okay, so I've dried that off and I've rubbed off all the masking fluid, so you can use your fingers just to rub left to right and it will all come off, and you see then that you've got the white of the paper left. So what we're going to do is take some of the yellow on the sponge and just start to sponge through this. So we've got to get some nice lighter colours within here. And you can be quite heavy-handed with this because we pretty much want to cover nearly all of this with the yellow. And you can't see the yellow anywhere else on the picture because the rest of it's darker anyway. So you can just build that through. In fact, you can do that with the ones down here as well. Just want them to be slightly more subdued. So I'm just bringing the yellow sponge in over that. Just dab that off, and then I'm going to come into the orange. You can bring in some of the orange into these areas. Try and be a bit more precise because the orange is a bit more powerful now. Just bring that through, just dabbing carefully, squeezing that sponge. I can just use a little bit of the sponge then to hit those areas. You can just bring that through. You can leave little bits of white at this stage because it just looks lighter and catches the light and works quite nicely. You just want to make sure you've got enough on that it's holding together as foliage. It's really nice and effective. Take a little bit through. We're just saying that these are autumn leaves down here. So it's quite nice to have these little bits, specks of dark orange and little bits of the light showing there as well. Okay. So I'll just rinse that out. And then I shall pick up a number 6, if I can find it. There it is. If I take a little bit of a watery mix of the sepia, I'm just going to come over some of these. I don't really want any of these to show as white on here because they won't feel like they're grounded otherwise. It'll look like a strange white blob. So actually when you come on with a little bit of watery sepia and you go over, because you don't actually need to be precise, what it does is it gives it shadow and grounding on the path. So I'm just going to keep it's a lighter variation, but it just holds them together on the path. So you can come further than you need to go, and that gives it the shadow and grounding in a layer that makes it feel like it's actually on the path rather than floating above the path. Okay. So I'll dry that off, and then I'm just going to show you the last stage for the sunlight. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. Now there's different ways that you can tackle sunlight, and then we've got some lovely beams coming through. You can try to preserve the white and then lift out, So you can try and lift out at the end as well. So I've lifted out some of the beams, or you can come on with something else that's more opaque to actually create that effect. So what I'm going to show you now, this is a Winsor & Newton opaque watercolour. It's called Bismuth Yellow. And this is going to give me those rays of sunshine that I want. So, can you see them coming in? Because it's opaque, it comes over. And it's a really effective way to get this on at the very end. So I haven't got it really strong. I'm not using it totally thick. I've dabbed in a little bit of water. Because it's a totally different colour to the rest of the painting, it's going to show really well. You can see those lights coming through. It won't show well totally on dark, but we've already lifted those bits out. It will glaze wherever you want it to glaze. So we could have a bit coming through here. With all of these things, it's always a case of less is more. You just want to create that little effect, and that already has given a beautiful glow that way. I'm going to bring this onto the path this way. So I'm all about showing you all the time different techniques. I want to show you how you can create things differently. There's no one right way and wrong way. And you can see that that's just giving it an instant glow just on that area. And that works just really well, just like the photograph. Just going to bring a bit there. So I'm just dabbing in. So with an opaque watercolour, you've got this power to glaze, but you can still see everything else underneath. It's not fully opaque. It's not like a gouache or an acrylic or an oil, but it just does work really, really well. Bismuth yellow is like quite a cool yellow, so we've used warm and then we've popped this cool in, and that's giving it a really nice glow. So it's a bit of a wow for the end there. So I'll dry that off and then mount that up for you. So there we are. So it's all just mounted around, so you can see the full effect of those beautiful autumn trees with that lovely glow of those sun rays coming through. So there's quite a few techniques that we will have learnt today. The glazing being the wow one, with an opaque watercolour. There's sponging, there's stippling, there's learning how to apply the masking fluid to get that realistic effect. Wet in wet, wet on dry, lifting out. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe, share, comment, and I shall pop another video for you here and a playlist for you here, and I shall see you next time.